Alright, somewhat unusually for me, I decided to do another video at night. I just got done testing the KahlesK318 at night. It's about 11:30 at night in Southern California. This is the same place where I do my videos. See how dark it is, although we're at, I think I saw 6400. And here's the basic view that I get. So that's something on the valley over there, the mountains in the back of the sun comes out. That right there, that's the church, 700 something yards out, that I normally, 760 something, that I normally look at. And a bunch of other things. Sun really dark, sun really bright. So when I test the scope for low light, I have a lot to look at. I'm gonna go try find some illumination so you can see the actual scopes right there set up on the tripod over there. It's hard to resolve and it's dark. Let me fix the focus. There you go. So this is the actual tripod and we are alive. So I apologize in advance if I end up squinting a lot. I've got this bright LED light shining here. Try to make it as dim as possible. I hope you can still see me. More importantly, I hope you can hear me. So I'm here to talk primarily about two scopes. A KahlesK318, which is a 3.5 to 18 by 50 compact ultra short. See how short this is, the rifle scope. And Tangent Theta, that's this guy here, it's my scope. TT315M, a 30mm version of Tangent's 3-15 by 50. And if you basically look at the size, you'll see the Kahles is probably about an inch shorter, maybe 1.2 inches, something like that. I've got a few other scopes here, Delta Striker, 4.5 to 30 by 50 with locking turrets. I'm wrapping up my review on that. A 5 to 50 Striker. And I have a Meopta Meostar 3 to 12 by 56. I'm about to send it back to Meopta, that has the new dichroic radical in it. My interest in this scope is primarily because it's a really nice low light scope. I'm here to do a low light test. I already did the dynamic test and I just finished with the low light evaluation. I've got a short video clip that I think that you saw in the beginning of this video. Kind of shows you what I see from the upper deck of my house, and I see a good part of Southern of the valley. Up. So basically I come out here at night. It's quarter to midnight right now, and look at scopes. I'll try to keep this short because I just came back from a work trip where I had a sinus infection, so it was miserable and I'm tired and sick, generally irritated. So let's talk about how the Kahles stacks up. I've talked about the Tangent Theta a lot over the last couple of years. It's still my favorite overall scope, but I like compact scopes that top out between 15 and 18 power thereabouts. And I wanted to look at the Kahles. Kahles is smaller, physically smaller than the Tangent Theta, but it is a little bit heavier. Also, this goes to 18 power. Tangent Theta only goes to 15. But on the flip side of the coin, on the low end, this only goes to 3.5, and even at 3.5, the field of view is comparatively narrow. First, so for the basic optics assessment, the K318 is an exceedingly nice scope. Is it the best ultra short out there right now? Maybe, definitely one of the top 3. Is it optically better than the Tangent Theta? No, it's not. Is it closer generally than the K624, the previous K312 were? Yeah, I think this is an improved optic, but Kahles is making all new compromises with these new line of scopes. So the 3 to 18 and 3.5 to 18 and the 5 to 25 and a 10 to 50 are based on Kahles's new erector system, the 5-power erector ratio versus the 4-power before. So it's a pretty new design, and traditionally Kahles was really famous for having really wide field of view, and with this new erector they gave up on that. The field of view of this scope is comparatively narrower than the competition, a lot narrower than a Tangent Theta, for example. To quantify that somewhat, so you get about the same field of view with a Kahles at about 12.5, 12.6 power as you do with a Tangent on a 15 power. It's a significant difference, and it tracks all the way down. If you look through the Kahles, one of the things you see, so there's an image in front of you, then there is a black ring, and there's another sort of a black ring, and they look slightly different because what you're seeing is one of the field stops, I think. So it sounds to me like Kahles has constricted the field of view a little bit to cut down on aberrations somewhat, and to make sure the scope doesn't tunnel. The scope does not tunnel, but there is a narrow field of view. The Tangent Theta doesn't really tunnel either. It's between like 3 and 3.2. There's a slight bit of tunneling you can induce, but generally a much wider field of view. So more on the Kahles. During the day when I looked at it, the image quality to me looks to be much improved over the previous generation, especially in terms of control of chromatic aberration. It is quite good. There is still chromatic aberration you see. It's a little bit more than I see in a Tangent, or I would see in Minoxus, stuff like that, but it is very good. It's definitely an alpha level scope. There's no question that this is optically excellent. Right. I didn't do too much tracking. It's a friend of mine's scope who I think did. I did take it to work, put it up in a collimator, and did tracking for about 15 milliradians. It is very slightly off. To get 15 milliradian elevation change, I have to dial 14.8 milliradian, but it's extremely consistent in that. And it's not like it skips a click, it's just very slight gradual change, and that would not bother me, right? If I shoot the scope, I shoot it a lot, I know what's what, right? Yeah, I write down the dope table in terms of this scope, and it's close enough where I would not have too much of a problem. On the other hand, for people who have to routinely dial 50 milliradian and go from scope to scope, 0.2 milliradian in distance is a big deal, right? But for me, it doesn't get a rise out of me, but it's there, so I should mention it. Right, Tangent, for example, does not have 50 milliradian. It's a dual turret, 6 milliradian per turret, so 12 total, and 12 is exactly 12. But like I can't do 15 with a trying. To do 15 with a Tangent, I have to do 2 turrets and then use the reticle, which I can do and I've done, but it's not quite the same. The turret on the Kahles is really nice clicks. It's very good. It's very solid. Lighted a lot. It's 50 milliradian per turn, which for me is a little much. Like, it's nice clicks. These are absolutely among the top 3 turrets I've seen behind Tangent Theta. I haven't tried zero comp yet, so we'll see how those are. It's a really nice turret, but I probably would have preferred it if it was maybe 12 milliradian per turn, something like that. But I'm nitpicking. This is a nice turret. Parallax is right under the elevation turret. It is a little bit on the stiff side, but the adjustment is very slow. So dialing in parallax very precisely is not hugely difficult. That's the weakness, for example, the delta scope, where the parallax movement is a little bit quick. It's not too bad. I use this delta scope a lot. I've spent a year running this delta scope. It's a new brand for me. And ultimately, parallax setting is a little bit more finicky, but in practical terms, it hasn't caused me any problems. Tangent is somewhere in between. It's slower than the Kahles, faster than the delta. It works really well for me. Windage. The windage turret on the Kahles has this weird ass thingy. On the outside, it's like a spinning disc. Presumably, if you accidentally bump it, the disc spins, the turret doesn't shift. I haven't had a chance to test it, but the turret is also quite good. Nice clicks, not as good as the elevation turret on this one. On this scope, elevation is much more distinct clicks, which is fine for me, right? My preferred operating mode is to really not dial elevation. I vote for wind. The reticle in the Kahles is the SKMR3. It's a tree reticle with lines, so really competent, thoroughly more in reticle. Is it my favorite? No. Is anything wrong with it? Also no. I prefer reticles with dots. This KMR3, it has lines. Okay. That would not bug me in the slightest. But it works really well. The reticle illumination is well calibrated, so the continuous rheostat variety seems to work nicely. So going back to the optics, in terms of resolution and contrast, the Kahles is almost on par with the Tangent. Up there, not quite, but it's close. It's very, very, very nice. The biggest real optical flaws of the Kahles really is just the field of view. And the depth of field, when you look at it, is not as shallow as it was on the previous generation Kahles scopes, but it's still comparatively shallow. With the Tangent, I set parallax somewhere 300-400 yards, and I basically don't have to do anything else for the bulk of my shooting. With Kahles, when I messed with it, I have to do more because the depth of field is shallower, so it's not like I can just set it at 300-400 yards around the course. I have to adjust it, but it's not bad. It's well calibrated. Getting behind the scope in terms of eye relief flexibility, it's a nice and easy scope to get behind. Can't complain. I think it's really well worked out. Similar in terms of ease of getting behind on high magnifications. It is similar in ease to the Tangent Theta. I didn't have so I had them on the same gun. Went back and forth a couple of times. Tried to set up for weird shooting positions, sitting, prone, bench, standing, different versions of sitting position, leaning and stuff. It's not a difficult scope to get behind at all. At low magnification, still not difficult to get behind, but more difficult than a Tangent Theta, right? So I started digging into it. And what happens, so virtually all variable power scopes have a little bit of a effective entrance pupil constriction as you go to low power. And the way to check it, if you look at the exit pupil, as you lower the magnification, notice beyond certain magnification, the exit pupil does not get any bigger, right? So the Kahles reaches its maximum exit pupil at just above 5 power. So the low magnification exit pupil is right around 9, maybe 10 millimeters. It stays that way all the way down to 3.5. On a Tangent Theta, the exit pupil is close to 12.5, 13 millimeters, I think. At least that's roughly. I didn't measure it exactly, that's the way I approximated it. In practical terms, it's a lot more area. So on 3 power or low power, Tangent Theta was substantially easier to get behind. You snap it up and you see something. Now, the side effect of that, you can move your eye more, you can pick up more distortion if you're at the edge, but I can get on target faster. It's a function of the larger exit pupil on low power and significantly larger field of view on equivalent power or on a low power. Is it a major knock against the Kahles? No. And partly because of how the scope is going to be used, not exactly going to be used for snap shooting. I'm sort of weird, so I look at this stuff. Is it important? Not so much. In low light, I really have no complaints. Tangent is slightly better owing primarily to the larger field of view, but aside from that, in terms of the control of stray light and flare and all that, the scopes are very similar to each other. Both absolutely alpha level performance. I've compared Tangent to a bunch of other stuff out there. It's absolutely as good as anything else with the same objective lens. And Kahles is up there as well, so there's no real difference. So the more I look at these scopes side by side, the more it really boils down to both are really competent designs, and the only real weaknesses of the Kahles are not major, minor weaknesses is really the field of view and depth of field. That's basically it. Mechanically, I don't see any real issues with it. Very slight offset once you get to extended elevation travel. The way I shoot it wouldn't get a rise out of me, and I don't know if it's consistent scope to scope. If it's just this one, probably just this one. But the Kahles is short, and it's a big deal, and making a scope short is a compromise. So what is more important to you? It's a tough call, right? Am I gonna get the Kahles and replace my Tangent Theta? No. But I would not feel in any way under-equipped with this Kahles. Really nice scope. It's a shame I don't have the Ducal Mark V with me, but I think the K318, based on my recollection, is a substantially better scope than the Mark V 3.6 to 18 by 44, which is a fairly direct competitor, being also very short and compact. But Kahles is also more expensive, so it's really not fully unexpected. Anyhow, that having been said, I'm going to wrap this up. It's my first low light video. I hope it worked out well. I switched to new manual focus lens. It's fairly bright, and the camera should be running very high. So let's see what the video looks like, and I will go from there. Once again, thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. If you have any questions, ask in the comments, contact me through the website. I'll be more than happy to answer if I can.